panel is on assessing the impact of alumni organizations. And this is all in agreement with our theme for this Congress, which is obviously from vision to action, what's the Cameroonian imperative. So we are going to be assessing what role our alumni organizations have to contribute to our development, our national dispensation. On stage today, I have representatives from two of the leading alumni organizations. To my right, I have Dr. Evaristus Inongene, who is kind of the dean of SOBA USA. He's been with SOBA USA for a very long time, the SASE Old Students Association. So I know there are young Sobans in the house, but they don't actually, know when he went to school there. But he's like the dean here. Dr. Inongene works for the Food and Drug Administration and is also a serial businessman. To my immediate left, I have Ms. Sarah Kum. Sarah Kum ranks as the DC chapter president of the SECARETS, SECA Ex-Students Association. SECA, as you all know, is really one of the leading institutions in Cameroon. One of the crown jewels of the Southwest region. We are very glad that you are joining us today.
Thank you.
SOBA, SECARETS, very, very old organizations for a Cameroon standard. I think SASE was probably the first school in 1938 or so when it was formed.
Actually, in 1912.
Okay, stand corrected.
You see, because it started as a primary school.
Oh.
And then transformed from Puchong. It's a whole history.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who don't know, the Cameroon government awarded SASE a prize this year as the best secondary school in Cameroon. And another organization, UNESCO, which the bishop has to go receive in Paris, awarded SASE again the best secondary school in Africa. Mm-hmm. And the criteria they use, which we're trying to think, they're looking at the alumni base structure of that institution. And if you look carefully, SASE alumni base is very solid. And so with that, there's a lot of endowment in the background. So 1938 is when the school actually became a secondary school, and it's based on the Catholic system. Most of the bishops in Cameroon from English speaking are from SASE College, not Bishop Rogan, as most people think, and even most of the priests. So I went to SASE, if you want to know, 1971. and I've kept that mantra. My son is here, graduated from Bowie State, went to SASE too, from USA. I try to push the culture, but as my sister says, an American child come back, forget Cameroon. But our goal is to take the history and teach our children so that they can carry this mantra. But we have to build a structure because SECA and SASE are old schools. We need to change that old concept of the old generation. I'm now the cross-bridge baby boomer, and you have to help us. We have to change it. Mm-hmm. That's why we are here to see what can we do. I've been fighting with the old generation to change that structure, but they're resistant, and that goes back into the Cameroon mentality.
So SASE and SECA being what you call the cream of the crop in training next generation of leaders in Cameroon, at least from the English-speaking sector. If you went to Lord's, SASE, all these places, it's as though you should have a training that you can take to the bank every day in Cameroon. Is that changing? Is that getting better?
Yes, it's changing. This Cameroon student, ex-president, right? Good. My other friend who was sitting here made a point. You see, we got to look. SASE was based on academics. Academics will not create jobs. Technology. That's the part now. And if you look at West Cameroon SECA, we're all trained to be lawyers, doctors. I was thinking of becoming a doctor until today. But I did not know computers. But look at the whole world. The world is changing. So thank God the Boya Diocese, where SASE is under, have created a Catholic university based only on technology. And we pushed for that to happen in consultation because we felt that Boya University is there quite all right, but it's still academics. We need job creation for the students themselves. And there's a lot of partnership going on between the schools, alumni, and the Cali University, where students now, like in Cali University, are able to make soap in Cameroon. Soap. That's the first step. So that is the culture where we're trying to change, and there are a lot of students that will be coming here for exchange program between that concept, so that we add a technology aspect where the young generations are not lost, but they can create their own jobs and become expert where USA can call them and hire them to come and work in USA, not the other way around. So that's what we're trying to do, to change the structure now and encourage the young ones to go that line of more job creation and self-empowerment.
I think that's extremely important. The skills, the skills to train, that will be used for those marketable skills.
Right.
Now, how was
with SECA? I wouldn't say it's an old structure that did not function. If you look at the vision that those creators of SECA had, they had a whole vision of graduating girls who were able to integrate into the society. With that, I mean, if you graduated from SECA, you had typing skills, you had cooking skills, and you had sewing skills. Balance that with your education, you were able to get out there, and if you could not succeed in creating a career of strictly on educational basis, you also could become a secretary, you could start a sewing business, or you could even start off a catering business. What has happened over the years is these programs are gradually fading away in the school. And our push has been to bring them back. Because now we're realizing that in order for you to graduate and continually market yourself, especially in the global economy, there have to be skills that are balancing. Okay, so when you graduate from any school here and you take the module here in the US, high school students are being trained to get out and get jobs. We are looking at a very competitive institution, okay, especially given a world where a woman is now struggling to position herself. So we're looking to train girls, introduce programs that actually empower them so that inadvertently they're growing themselves and they're also growing the community. Because you all agree with me, once a woman is powerful, there is a powerful family base. And that family grows consistently and creates a very good and educated community because that mother is there nurturing, that mother knows where to introduce the economic resources and introduce information that is beneficial to the child, who will not go out and become a street guy or a street girl, but would use that information to better the community in which they exist. And that has been the push in recent years of EXICA students to actually grow that type of women who are graduating and also contributing to the community.
So to follow up on that, some of can you talk a little bit on some of the projects or endeavors that Sacred USA has been able to do over this time?
There are lots of projects that have been going on, and we have scholarship programs that have been introduced. There is now a push for sanitation. There's always been a project to improve our, it's called the sick bay, where we're also focusing on the health aspect of the girl child. But in the pipeline, there are several projects that in the pipeline. We're looking to actually put up a modern refectory structure for the school. We're also looking to introduce computer programs into the school now, and also exploring different ways of creating an alumni network where we're actually having volunteers going back and introducing some programs that the girls are not aware of. For example, typically, as you said, Ms. Nenongene, we grow up knowing you have to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a teacher or engineer, and that's it. There are several careers out there that African children are not privileged to. And so it makes sense for us to create that professional database where we're tapping into volunteers who can engage in conversation, introduce this profession to the girls, and actually orientate them on what they are and see if there's an interest and work with them towards achieving those goals.
Yeah, that's really neat. Dr. Nongenim, I'll come back to, you highlighted this SASE alumni base and how it's structured. How do you build? Because, for example, when you go to Harvard, and we all ask the question, why is it that, for the last how many years, the U.S. presidents have either been from Harvard or from Yale? There is why. And how is it that the Obama White House has a lot of Harvard people in the White House? And how is it that the Clinton White House has a lot of Yale people in the Clinton White House? So you ask those questions. How are you all tapping that network of alumni to make sure that the people who are graduating today can have that access to society, to upward mobility?
If I answer that question the Cameroon style, my sister will not be happy. but I will answer it the most logical way. And here's the deal, and I'll tell you from my own personal experience. If you look at Cameroon structure today, most of the people in top system are Sobans. Most. Is because when our philosophy is a Soban gets priority. I've had situations where I was called to look for somebody for a position. And I went to the Soba A group and I said, position open, blah, blah, blah. I said, but caveat must be a Soban or related to a Soban. People call all over the place, I will not budge. Until a lady called me and said, my father is a Soban. And I checked, I said, yes, okay, you can come. See, that is just the network, what Harvard, because it's a Harvard system. Harvard takes care of Harvard. So SASE must take care of SASE. And we have this philosophy where we hope it will work. In Cameroon today, if I appear anywhere, even right now, even though my sister does not like it, and I meet someone, I'll get what I want. It's just the structure of that you take. It's not really nepotism. It's the Harvard concept, because first of all, you must qualify.
Is the Harvard concept correct?
Yeah, the Harvard concept is correct.
Why?
Because I know you. I went to school with you. I know your weak points. I know you can do the job. I know where you are limited, and I can trust you to a certain degree. It's all about trust. The person you sleep with, the person you stay in the same room with for 5 years, 7 years. Now, not all the time, like I said in my introduction, we have bad elements in the family, but we don't watch them in the street. So I know which one I will take and which one I will not take. See, we have that, but most of the time that's what I do, personally. And so it works well where the Harvard model is what I know most Sobans use. And it is our own kind of network. Now, other schools, if they copy that, it will be fine. Now, but it doesn't mean that we should take people and put in position where they're not qualified. I don't do that. The girl that called me that my father is a Soban, she was qualified. It's the Kennedy formula I use. Simple.
Does Sekared do the Harvard model?
I won't say we have the Harvard model, because if you try to introduce a Harvard model into the Cameroonian context, it becomes a failure in one sense. In the sense that where you have a society where you have a lot of students graduating from a university that is not strictly associated to Harvard, it becomes a problem where we're only looking for either Sobans or Secrets to get jobs. That said, it is, when you look at it in comparison to Harvard, I would say it's Sekar and SASE, the secondary schools. And then we have universities. So you have University of Yaoundé, University of Boya. And once you graduate from Boya or Yaoundé, it becomes a strict, slightly different module from graduating from Harvard. Mm-hmm. Harvard, you have professional skills that have been built and they're introduced. Now, when we leave from Seka, we're either going to Yaoundé, we're either going to Boya. There again, we're further formulated in building skills that are necessary for our workforce. And when we graduate and we only want to look for Seka rates, I think it becomes a little bit tricky in that context. So while a secretary might be very inclined to help a secretary get a job, I don't think it's necessarily tailored to the Harvard module where, okay, you graduated from Harvard, will go. You also have these other diverse skills that are coming from the benefit of you either going to Boya or either going to Yaoundé University, and balancing that, you're able to filter it. But that's not to say if I were a secretary today and I saw a qualified secretary, I won't hire them off the bat because I know that they've received
so
kind of training.
the point that both of you are highlighting is the fact that you can vouch on the training.
Right.
Yes.
You can vouch on what you learned.
Right.
Some of the skills that you learned, the development skills that you got while you were there, and which was the norm out there, which is what the Harvard grad is going to vouch. The Emory grad, they're going to vouch. The other question is, how do we expand the impact of SASE beyond SASE, the impact of Sekaret beyond Seka? How do we do that? Is that something that you all are pursuing? Is there a need for that? Or can we leave it as it is?
My personal philosophy is, and what I've done is, we believe that one way to change Cameroon is through the alumni foundations from US. If the Sobans, the Sekaris, the Sessions, the Opsans, if they are solid and they translate that solidity into grassroots in their secondary schools from Form 1, Cameroon will change in 10 years. That is my philosophy. So we encourage other alumni groups to take it solid, but most of them are fighting among themselves. Right here, I know a lot of them that are fighting to a point where it's so funny. And then, but that is where the problem is. And back home, the main body of our alumni is back home, and they are just the normal, typical Cameroon style. So if they don't see us being united here, it's like, well, Cameroon all over again. I hope I'm making sense here. And so we try as much as possible that there'll be one day where we will get all alumni to come in a room and brainstorm and see how we can make sure the alumni system of every school is very solid. There are times where I've offered services, go to Sase College every year and give a seminar on the children, empowering them on basic things they can do. For example, last time I went there and the principal gave me a choice, and I said I want to speak to them for 15 minutes about something like pamplemousse. You all drink pamplemousse, right? Gino, right? But you know it's very toxic to the body if you don't know that.
FDA.
Yes, and it's sold here. 4 years ago, I confronted a guy to change the label that they don't have the sugar content. And if a diabetic drinks the pamplemousse and have a diabetic coma, they can sue the ship, everything right up to Brazzaville. They argued with me, and later on they started putting the flag on tip top here because they saw that it was correct. Now, the Ministry of Commerce allowed it to be sold, so you are actually polluting the young children growing up with high sugar content and all that stuff. So you educate the children to tell their parents at home when those are ministers' children in the school, tell your parents who are the politicians, those things are wrong. That's how you can start fighting the system from the table in the house or the family, because our parents, uncles, aunties, they are the same politicians we meet every day. And if we can get these young children to be knowledgeable at that level that this is wrong, this is right, they will be able to grow up with that focused mind of doing things right. That's one of the approach. See, so that's how we encourage every alumni to do the same thing, because everything is based on the young children growing up, because our generation has failed. So that's just the truth.
Ms. Kum, you mentioned Seka's focus on the girl child in Cameroon. Is that a broad focus?
It is a broad focus, and as much as we Sekarettes work within the Cameroonian community, we've also tried to reach out. We've engaged in community services, taking on different programs around within the U.S. That actually puts us out there. So every once a year, I think this was introduced last year, we have a National Day of Service where we actually engage in different activities with different American organizations that will get us out there. on a broader scale, how do any alumni association work out of this alumni contest to actually bring in a powerful influence to kids in Cameroon? Number one, we as Alumni Association need to form a very strong organization.
And how would you
in a sense,
measure the strength of it?
The strength of an organization, the way we are formed now, it's just having, okay, we have a president, we come in once every year, we have a conference, and we can talk, and as you said, the people who can spend hours and hours writing on the internet. That is a weakened system. A strong system is one that positions itself to be able to go outside and seek resources that will be used to benefit those that really need them. And by saying that, I mean, if we Cameroonians could actually form organizations that have a structure, okay, it has a structure of, I am structured to receive grants, I'm structured to be able to implement programs. We then position ourselves where an outsider is looking in and saying, there is a structure that can receive this money, there is a structure that actually has a strong focus, and there is a structure that has ground roots and they have activities that are engaging. Now, when we only form around, okay, this is us, once a year we have a convention, once a year we're going to have fundraisers. And as individuals, we're going out and individually talking to the school. It really doesn't give you a good sense of a strong organization. And if I'm coming in to fund that organization, regardless of what your objectives are, it also does not give me a good information or a good education on you being able to handle the funds I'm going to give you. You're able to show me that you have the manpower to deliver on that project. So what we alumni need to do, we need to first of all stop talking too much on the internet. Number two, we need to be able to form an organization that is formed around skill-based, organization that is formed around projects, organization that delivers and it shows transparency. Now, when we go out to our schools back home and we engage the young girls, we should be writing reports on those. These are ground activities that you then use to apply for funds. When you go out on the internet, you're talking, you do not know who is in that forum. And when I'm trying to fund you, I can go out and Google your organization. And if all I see is nonsense talk, you don't get the money. So inadvertently, we are indeed killing ourselves, okay? So if we can get past that, if we can understand that every person within our organization has a skill set and can form that skill set around a project, we can deliver, we can report, we can track our funds, then we are better positioned now to go out, ask for the money that is indeed needed, use our education and the resources, because as servants, as secretaries, we have a powerful skill set. Nothing you're going to need to go out and employ people. You can self-employ to start delivering. And once that is done, trust me, we will be the powerful organizations that we really need to be. Yeah.
I think that's I can't really. That's a very strong point that you've raised, because it segues really nicely to Harvard is Harvard because of its endowment.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
It's a private school. Mm-hmm. You know, the funding for SASE comes from the church. The funding from Secret comes from the Cameroon Baptist Convention. Right. So and this goes all the way to our individual institutions, the universities, where that endowment base is not there. Mm-hmm. The endowment base is not there. So how do we, as part of funding, to fund private secondary schools, high schools, and by extension, private universities, how can you make that happen? Because as far as I know, you don't have an endowed professorship at the University of Boya. You don't have it at any state universities. You have people who are agrégés, but you don't have some base endowment funds that's for that professorship. Mm-hmm. And the funding for SACE is through the church. It's through my alms that I gave. So how do we change that dynamic?
Well, I won't go into that because there's a lot of things in the background that is not really
go into it in
what you said. Because when I engage the church on that issue, it's a little bit different from what you said. Okay. Having said that, we on the verge of forming an endowment, which is what you're saying. But you see, that is Sober America forming an endowment which would answer that problem, but it has to go back to the owner of the school, which is the diocese. That's where the political stuff comes in. It's a little bit, we have one in play, and it's been launched about 4 years ago, where it will serve that same platform so that we can do many projects straight from the endowment. But it has to go through some church, and the Catholic Church is so complex than what you think. So I'll leave it like that. Mm-hmm. So we have the good intention, but the structure is really different. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I would take a different approach. The suggestion here is not necessarily an endowment, but a suggestion that when you, as an alumni association, you need to look at the trends out there. And the trends, when you look at what is going on, especially in development, okay, you then seize the opportunity to structure around the development trend. And the trend now is to use diaspora organizations to deliver. And we, the diaspora alumni, is not different. Mm-hmm. So if the development trend is to build schools, then the alumni diaspora organization can be better positioned and structured to receive those funds to go build a school. If the development trend is to train young kids in education, we can form around that concept to be able to receive those funds and train those kids. So what I'm saying in essence is, right now, in development trends, they're actually looking at alumni and diaspora organization to be able to take the moment, go out there and engage in those grassroots efforts. For SOBAN, for example, I would say, if your institution is growing young boys, there could be a program this alumni association could introduce to the school. It could be skills, it could be technical training, and you actually show proof that this alumni association has been delivering, and you could get funding for that. Likewise for EXA USA or any EXA around the world, if you're showing that, here is a girl child that I'm trying to build and educate in a particular skill set, then the trend is actually to give you the money because they know that diaspora organizations understand the ground, they understand the culture, and they're able to integrate into the system and deliver more than any contractor or any NGO that is coming from the outside.
We're going to start opening up for questions. All right, we have the microphone. Johannes.
Good morning, and once more, thank you for the great discourse. My question goes to Mrs. Sarah.
Sarah Cole.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I wish, the representative from Lesser should have been here because my question is kind of directed to them. Mm-hmm. My mom and my aunties, they are lessons, and, everybody is aware of that, that divide that exists between Lesser USA and I think Lesser Cameroon, something like that, until the bishop or the cardinal had to stop it. The cardinal had to come here under the supervision of the bishop in Bamenda, and they had to stop them because of all this, divide here and there. And it caused a lot of issues too because, families started getting problems, marriages started having problems because if my auntie is married my uncle is married to a lesson who is lesser USA and is not lesser Cameroon. You know, that happened. So my question now is, how do alumni, how do they tailor the activities in such a way that, is inclusive? Because, alumni is great, but the notion we have out there, especially when they're having the conventions, want to show off, class, all those things, they happen. But is that a good example that they are showing to the young generation that is, growing, or those coming after them?
Well, I think, I wish the lesser representative was here, so to answer that question. But
what happens in case that, that happened with your alumni?
We secretaries have not experienced that kind of divide, and I wouldn't speak for lesser. But what I would say is, if you look in the cross sector of alumni organization, there is always a tendency to personalize issues. Okay, so I think we need to get out of personalization and focusing on what the objective is. If I'm formed around an objective, we can engage in a very constructive debate without getting personal. So if you, you come to me and we're talking about providing computers to SASE or to SECA, even if we disagree, we should be disagreeing on how we need to provide those computers. We shouldn't be disagreeing because you're Mr. X and I'm Mrs. X, okay? Once that tendency exists, then it becomes a divide. So what I suggest is, whatever organization we belong to and however we form, our main focus should be on the general objective of that organization. We should also understand that however our debates go, they should never get personal. Because once they get personal, you destroy. If you need to grow, it should be that objective, and you should be focusing on introducing ideas, not criticizing those who are struggling to actually build it.
Can I add something? I'm not from Lesa or Ofsam because those are girls' schools. But this is our experience from the SOBA alumni. And I think it can help other alumni too. We have problems internally. So our class structures are stronger. The class of 66, class of 75, class of this. They're even stronger. Now, what we do, instead of raising money to go do a project, we have to tell the school, give us a list of your priorities of what the school needs. They are on the ground, they know what they need. The problem with most alumni in the diaspora is we want to raise money and do what we want to do. But the school has a need that may be different from our own objective. So to eliminate part of that discord where people are fighting, if we go to the school and say, okay, this year you have a list of these demands that you would like to do, we can only do A, B, C. This is what we're going to do. And it works very well that way for SOBA.
What other questions? Cedric here.
I think it's on. Thank you. Thank you to both the panelists for everything you've shared so far. And I have to be very honest with you. This year is probably the first time I've gotten information or heard a lot about alumni. And as a matter of fact, most of you know, about a week and a half ago, Delta held their 100th anniversary and was hosted here in DC. I believe they're founded out of Howard University. And I was very fascinated by just the grandeur and just the fact that they were able to pull such a large number, regardless of those particular issues that each chapter may have or may not have the alumni here in the diaspora. I've considered pulling together and doing a large convention, not just as Sakaret or Soba or individual, but as alumni of Cameroon, and pull together for whether it's networking, just to bring the entire community together?
I can speak only for SOBA. Right now, we are in partnership with OPSAN, that's Okoyo, where in every city we try to get a joint venture. It has been done in Maryland and I think in Atlanta. So that is where we have to start from somewhere. So we started. Our goal is to partnership, like I said a few minutes ago, that I'm hoping for a day where all the alumni will come together and brainstorm on what is the strategy we can use to empower Cameroon children. So it comes back to your question. We've not done that. But maybe after this, we'll start pushing that idea. Or I'll do my best.
Other questions? All right, we have Mr. Efoy. Do you have the mic? Oh, okay.
All right, I would like to thank you for the gentleman for a very good theory of change, trying to start building from within the family, because I strongly, personally believe from my experiences that that's where it begins. If we have good citizenship, good individuals in the community, that's where we start to change. And I'd like to thank the lady for clearly expressing the need and necessity for good structured organizations. I have 3 questions. For the lady, I would like to know, why is it very important or imperative for us to build organizations, alumni in the diaspora, gather help, and take it back home? Why can't we build capacity within the country where we have so many resources? Why can't we figure out solutions in the country and build sustainable projects and not just look at things that we can fix for the moment? For the gentleman, how can you extend that greater theory of change to the Cameroonian community so we can look at the whole of society process? And how can we go from that theory to actual practice? How can we take what you're trying to do with your alumni and make it a bigger thing for a region, for the nation, so we can move in 10 years to a different level? And for both of you, the concept of using your alumni, say if you have an opportunity, you call your fellow alum. She has one, she calls her fellow alum. Isn't that to itself, or to an extent, some type of corruption? If you don't open opportunities to everybody? In this country, I've worked with the US federal government. We know that if you do things like that, it's sort of, to an extent, corruption. That's why they have USA jobs or federal opportunities. So everything is streamlined, and people don't get to pick who they want. I belong to fraternities in this country. I belong to the US military, all the fraternities. But still, even though we get those preferential treatment and benefits, you have to go through a process to where somebody doesn't handpick you. For example, in our country, we know how Francophones choose to call Francophones or whatever. Anglophones call Anglophones or whatever. Isn't that going to just be more of that deep divide that's tearing the country apart?
Yeah, thank you very much for those 3 questions. And I know there are many hands going up. I'm going to let both of them respond to the question. I think just to clarify, if you guys misspoke, the issue of hiring a Soban was more of saying, I am more comfortable given the experience that they've gone through, even though it's the same qualifications. You're not limiting people. You're not saying you're looking for Sobans, but once you go through the hiring process, you say, I know the formation that this person had because I'm comfortable with that. I know the formation that this person had because they went to Harvard, where I went to Harvard, and this is what we did.
That's exactly.
So it's not an issue of that. There's preferential treatment and saying we are looking for SOBA graduates.
That's correct.
But I'll open it up to Ms. Kum regarding the issue of, can you build the alumni to be more than just the alumni and actually build capacity for change in Cameroon?
Okay. The question was, how do we sustain and how do we build capacity? Is that right? Mm-hmm. And again, to add to the point you made about hiring, understand that we, the alumni, are not actually hiring. So there isn't an obligation on us to publish any positions. Now, where we have to publish those positions, if we're hiring, then it becomes very competitive and it has to be open. I think what's going on now is him being an alumni with an EXA or SOBA. If I see a position out there, the first tendency is for me to put out a general email to the SECA e-group saying there is this position open with this person. If you have the skills, apply. And that to me doesn't really create a problem of competitiveness or not competing the jobs. To elaborate on capacity building and sustaining projects, you are right. There has to be a two-pronged approach to capacity building. Number one, it has to be internal capacity building, which I referenced to earlier, and that is building the structure, the alumni structure, to be able to get up and to deliver on those projects. The second prong is actually building the capacity of whoever that internal capacity has been built up to assist. And how do we sustain those projects? We need to put good instruments in place. Your project can only be sustainable as much as the knowledge and the technological exchange skills that are shared with that person whose capacity you're trying to build. Now, when I reference again capacity, it's not capacity in the U.S. The only capacity we need to build in the U.S. is the capacity of the alumni structure. When you go back to Cameroon, you're building the capacity of the girls, the capacity to be able to get up and able to go out there and compete. And that's how you sustain your project. Was my project education? Yep, I need to build their capacity to the point where they're educated enough. And how do I sustain it? There has to be a reasonable measurement in how we evaluate the program over time to make sure that, you know what, the capacity we intended to build is actually built, and that over time is sustaining itself.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Dr. Inongene, the question was how, with the change theory that you're envisioning, how do you expand that beyond SASE?
Well, the change theory is very simple. It's all on a platform of patriotism. If we can preach patriotism, and if people can actually bury themselves in patriotism, like my sister said, it will work. See, the problem is we're not patriotic. This is the hall. See, it's empty, right? But the next day, somebody will call you, oh, how was that CPS stuff? But he was sitting here in the house watching Nigerian movies. That's one example. I translate that again to our Cameroon issues. We have central problem in the fabric of our system. We call a meeting. We have consular issues. It's been going on for long, right? That's one example. The email goes out, and we send it to alumni groups. We spread the word around, right? Now, people don't come. Then they call you from Houston and say, oh, I need to get a visa to go to Cameroon. Can you help me? I said, no, I can't. You come yourself. Because when we call a meeting, the same people in the network, like I said, in the house, there's some bad seats in the house, will criticize us, oh, you CPDM. It's not about CPDM, it's not about SDF, it's about Cameroon changing. That patriotism of coming to a meeting like this, sitting and said, what are our needs for consular service to be changed? We're not patriotic. That's the bottom line. If we can have that 5% patriotism, we can network with every alumni and things will happen.
Where is it going to come from?
It's got to come now from us networking with other alumni, because that is the fabric, as my sister said, to build that foundation. So it's patriotism and feeling an element of yourself that I belong to this and I'm an element of change. It is looking beyond yourself, not to yourself. See, what has killed us is thinking what is in there for me, rather am I a service to my community? That's all. It's all about service. And if you cannot sacrifice, you've wasted your life on earth. You can have all the money, and if you cannot show me where your money has done for charity, like basin, I know that your money is misroad money. That's just me. I'm not saying that I'm the richest person, I'm just a basic person. Amen?
Question? All right, let's.
I just want to make a point before I ask my question. I personally believe in the power of alumni. I know people were brought a point about it might be corruption just choosing a particular set of alumni. I feel like just like Harvard and all these Ivy League schools here have these great opportunities, I feel like what we are doing back home in terms of alumni is really great, because you think about it, schools like Sacred Heart, which I come from, SASE, Soba, Lesa, it's not easy to get into those schools. It's not, I don't feel there's any level of corruption at that level. So I feel like it's what alumni do for their people back. It's really a great thing. My question is in regards to the fact that I have a feeling that these schools haven't changed a lot from when you left. I feel like they don't grow. My question is, how do we increase the level, the number of people that go through this through the schools like Soba or Sase? Has there been an increase in, let's say, in enrollment? Mm-hmm. Like in my year, we're like 100 to go in. I still feel like today, 2013, there's still 100 people to go in.
Well, maybe they're just like admitting the cream of the crop or something. I don't know. Or maybe there is competition from other schools sprouting up.
Not for SASE specifically, not really. When I was there, the school kept the population around 350 because of the dormitory capacity. Now, it has gone to over 1,000, and so there's need for more dormitory expansion, which they are doing. The problem is, which is a real problem, the school was designed for English-speaking Cameroonians, but today, 60% are coming from the French-speaking side. And so there's that push for admit my child, but there's no room in the dormitory capacity. So the expansion is really dormitory capacity. Mm-hmm. And then getting good teachers to teach them. So the school has to balance those two to make sure it works. The school would love to be 5,000, but how do they take care of? Then the element of safety now. You know, it's another aspect which is going in Cameroon, safety. So that's what SASE specifically is working against. You know, so they have to now, as he said, the cream of the crop. Now, there are some families ready to pay $1 million a year just to go to SASE right now. I know, but there's no space. People call me, my child has to go. I say, why? I say, because you are a sovereign, you can get the child in. And well, sometimes I do as an alumni. I haven't graduated, you get them to Harvard. Yeah, right, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me. Let me speak from SECA's perspective. There's been a significant increase in the student population. I think it's a little close to 1,500 now. And as you're aware, SECA also has a high school. The high school, the problem with that increase is there hasn't been a significant increase in the structures that accommodate these children. Okay, and so when you heard me speak earlier, I told you there's one main project we're engaged in now, and that's building the refectory. Because the refectory that's currently at the school should have had a capacity of 36 from when the initial founders, built that school. And now the student population is 1,500 and still sitting in the same refectory. So it goes across a lot. There are health issues there, okay? So it's growing. It's growing. I don't know if it's the cream of the crop, but it has increased significantly over the years.
One more. We have time for one more question.
Okay. I think just for those of us who may be observers, I see most of you reference or attempt to make a comparison between Harvard University and SECA or SASE. And I just want you to clarify or explain why that comparison, given the fact that Harvard is a university and SECA is at most a high school. And my second question is, what is it about SECA or SASE that is so unique to both of you that you prefer to talk about the SECA or SASE alumni versus your various universities?
Well, first clarification on alumni base is the SASE model of an alumni organization, apparently, I understand, is modeled after the Harvard alumni base. So that's where the comparison came from. And your second question, and it's always great when I can answer both questions. The second question is, this panel is dedicated to alumni groups, to see what the impact is of alumni groups in Cameroon's development. So.
I'm talking about the alumni for the SASE, also alumni versus the alumni for the
I think we were asked to speak specifically on the SASE or SECA or Cameroon secondary schools alumni, not where I graduated in the US. Does that clarify your point? We're asked to. Okay. Oh no, I left high school and came straight to US. Well, and to add on that, you remember why we use Harvard is because SASE has, in those days when my parents went there, it was, you don't bring me SASE. It was SASE was like a household name. In those days in US, it was like, you from Harvard, yeah, you're the cream of the crop. That's just how we use the comparison. SASE is even till today, it's a household name for our parents' generation. That's the truth.
Let me add to one point. It's always good to have a comparison to what is beyond you. Something that is higher, something that is working well, and something you can module after. Okay, so if you keep referencing SASE and SECA, always structured around its Cameroonian Alumni Association, we need to get out of this Cameroonian community, look at what is working well and bring it back. So making that comparison is very important, because if not, we're only set with organizations that are either struggling or failing, and we are concluding that we're the best because we are not failing. So there has to be a comparison to something that is working successfully so that you can measure up to that.
With that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll bring this panel to a close.
Yeah, thank you.